Good afternoon, our students out there and listeners. You're welcome to today's teaching online by St. Charles College, Onitsha. The subject we have for today's lesson is English language, and we are going to discuss on the all-important topic under the grammatical aspect of English, which is called CONCORD. We are going to see the CONCORD and the rules. The presenter for today is from English department. This is Mbakogu. Before we go into our presentation for today, it is expedient that you as students and the listeners out there know the aim, what we intend to achieve by the end of this lesson, called the specific objectives. Now, by the end of this lesson, the students should be able to do what? 1. Define CONCORD. Tell us what CONCORD is. State the general rules of CONCORD. Respond to objective questions on CONCORD. Now, it is expected that as students, to be able to do these things, can identify nouns and verbs in a sentence. For instance, Mrs. Mbakogu teaches English. In this sentence, we can see that this verb of the sentence is what? Teaches. Why Mrs. Mbakogu is the one doing the verb, doing the action in the verb, otherwise known as the subject. Now, what is this CONCORD all about? As I said earlier when I introduced the topic, that it is a grammatical aspect of English. So this topic, CONCORD, is a grammatical aspect of English. And what is it all about? It is the agreement that exists between the subject and the verb in a given sentence. There must be an agreement between the subject. As I've given you example, Mrs. Mbakogu teaches English. In that sentence, Mrs. Mbakogu is the one doing the action of teaches. Why teaches is the action being done. Now, between the subject and the verb, it is expected that there should be what? An agreement. The two should agree. Because even the Bible makes us understand that two cannot work together except they agree. So also is it in grammar. This CONCORD is also all about matching the verb of the sentence with the right subject in terms of number and a person. There should be a subject that should match a given verb for the sentence to move smoothly. When we talk of in terms of number and person, number here stands for or refers to the subject, whether the subject is singular or plural. Now, when we talk of the person here refers to the three personal pronouns we have in English, which are, you have I as the singular, you have we as the plural for I, you have you as both singular and the plural, while you have he, she, it as the singular for the third person, where their plural is there. Now, note again that singular verbs, it is good you know it, are not formed the way we form nouns. Rather, when we have singular verbs in English language, we form them the way we form plural nouns. Because in formation of plural nouns, we usually add to their singulars, inflections like s, es, ies. Take for instance, you have boy, that's the singular, and the plural is boys. Because of the addition of the what? The s. That has changed the noun, which used to be singular boy, to plural boys, because you added inflection s. It is not like that in the formation of singular and plural verbs. The way we form singular verbs is by accepting inflections like s, es, ies, while as in the plural nouns, while in the plural forms of the verb, they don't accept any such inflection as in the case of singular nouns. For example, this book, when you say this book, you are talking of a singular book, one book, you are pointing at a book. Okay, because it is singular, it has to enter into agreement with what? With a verb that is also what? Singular. And that is why you have this book belongs to me. That s added to belongs make belongs to become a singular verb and not plural verb. Now, for the second sentence, we have the children talk a lot. The children talk a lot. In this case, you see that the children is plural, and because it is plural, it has to agree with a verb that is plural. And as I told you earlier, plural verbs don't accept inflections. That is why it will be wrong for you to say the children talks a lot. That's grammatically a disagreement. It cannot go. It is a grammatical discord. There is no agreement because this one is plural and this one, you made this one singular. The two words cannot get together in a sentence. Again, the pronoun I and the you. You see, most times when we speakers of English and you speaking English, we always take I to be singular because it refers to one person, and you to be singular because it refers to one person. But in grammar, we usually treat them as plural for most verbs, except for the verb to be, where it has to be with the pronoun I. I stands for a person, but it usually goes with plural verbs because of the egocentric nature of I. Now, because of that, I and you usually go with plural verbs, except in the verb to be, where it has to do with the pronoun I. Example, I eat always. Eat there is a plural verb. It is a plural verb, but it entered into agreement with I because of the rules of grammar. Another example, you make a lot of noise. You make a lot of noise. In this sentence, you can also see that you there has been treated as plural because it accepts a verb in the plural form. Now, where it has to do with the verb to be, I said there is a little adjustment where it has to do with verb with the pronoun I. You say, I am your teacher. I am your teacher. I, for the verbs to be, go with am in the present. And the past form of am is was. You don't say I were. No, you say I was wrong and not I were wrong. Now let us consider the rules of CONCORD. What are the rules we need to observe when we make use of CONCORD? What are these rules? Number one, I have said some of it. Number one is this, that when a subject is singular, it usually takes up a singular verb. A singular subject takes up a singular verb. I have taught you how you know the singular verbs. Now, the madman sleeps under the bridge. In the sentence, the madman, how many madmen are we talking about? Just one. Okay? That is the one sleeping. So it is the doer of the action in sleeps. If you're asked who sleeps under the bridge, you will say it is the madman. And the madman is singular. It agrees with a singular verb. Now, the second rule is If a sentence has a plural subject, it takes a plural verb. Previous sentence has a plural subject, it takes a plural verb. Example, the thieves are notorious. The thieves are notorious. In that sentence now, you can see that the subject of the verb is thieves, and thieves is in plural. It has to enter into agreement with a plural verb. The thieves are notorious. Igbo men are good husbands. That's another example. Igbo men are good husbands. You have men, plural, is entering into agreement with are, plural. That is agreement. Now, for number three rule, a sentence that has two singular subjects joined by coordinating conjunction and takes a plural verb. When you have a sentence that have two subjects, you have understood already what subject is all about. When a sentence contains two subjects and are joined together by the type of conjunction we call coordinating conjunction, exemplified in and, they usually take a plural verb. Example, the man and his wife. What are the two subjects here? You have the man, you have his wife. These are two different individuals joined together by the coordinating conjunction and you now use a plural verb are. The man and his wife are generous and not is generous. The cat and the rat are great enemies. Cat and the rat are the two subjects yoked together by the coordinating conjunction and. Now, the fourth rule states that when two subjects that create the impression of a unit, what do we mean by creating impression as a unit? They represent one thing or one person. When you have two things, in the third rule, I told you that when you have two subjects and these two subjects are joined together by the coordinating conjunction and, that they usually go with plural. But there are some cases where these two subjects that are joined together by this and, when you join them together, you see them forming, giving you impression that it is a unit, that it represents one person or that it represents one thing. When you have such, joined together by the same coordinating conjunction and they take singular verb. You have to be careful here. For example, bread and tea is good for breakfast. In this case now, you see bread and tea. You cannot take tea without bread. The two go together. And that is why you say you use a singular verb for it. Now B, rice and stew remains my favorite food. Now you see two things joined together, rice and stew. You cannot take stew and be eating it without rice. That is why the two to go together, the two, one cannot deal without the other. We now use a singular verb, remains. Another example, the principal and manager of St. Charles College hails from Nogwa. In this case now, you see that the person, if you come to St. Charles College, if you ask of the manager, the person that is the manager is also the principal, meaning that the two names refer to one person. In such case, we use a singular verb. That is why we use hails and not held. Another example, teaching and learning is a serious business. Teaching cannot go when you teach, the person you're teaching is learning. And you cannot teach in isolation, you must be teaching somebody. And that person that you're teaching is learning, so the two get together. That is why we see it as a unit and it has to enter into agreement with it. It is wrong for you to say teaching and learning are serious business. No, it is grammatically wrong. Now let's get to the fifth rule. The fifth rule states that a sentence with singular subject having intervening expressions introduced by, together with, as well as, in addition to, along with, in collaboration with, like, with, they take a singular verb. Now, how do we mean? How we mean here is that when in a sentence you have the subject and you have another word joined to that subject by the use of these conjunctions I mentioned here, that it has to enter into agreement with a singular verb. This is because that subject of the verb of the sentence that came before this is in singular, and because it is in singular, whether what comes after these conjunctions as well as in addition is plural, you don't mind it. What you mind is that first one you have before the introduction of these conjunctions. Now, for example, you see here, the president with his ministers was at Abuja. In this case now, the subject of the verb of this sentence is what? The president. And the president is one person. Because the president is one person, you don't have to now consider his ministers, which is plural, to agree with the verb. No. What should enter into agreement with the verb should be that subject that came before these conjunctions with. The preposition with, the president with his ministers was at Abuja and not were at Abuja. Another example, Mrs. Obidi as well as Mrs. Mbakogu. You see, we have here the first person, the subject of this verb of the sentence here is Mrs. Obidi. Now, the verb has to enter into agreement with Mrs. Obidi because Mrs. Obidi is the subject of the verb of the sentence. And that is why you have teaches there and not teach. So you have Mrs. Obidi as well as Mrs. Mbakogu teaches English language. Now let's go to the sixth rule. A sentence with a plural subject having the same intervening expressions as together with, as well as, in collaboration with, as I have mentioned in the fifth rule, take what? It takes a plural verb. Now, look at it. A sentence with a plural subject. The subject is plural, and you have these intervening expressions mentioned in the fifth rule, like together with, as well as, in collaboration with. What it goes with is a plural verb. Example, the students as well as their form teacher are lazy. Now, you see that form teacher that is close to the verb is in singular, but you don't have to consider it. What you consider is the subject, because CONCORD is the agreement that exists between a subject and a verb. The subject of the verb of this sentence is the students and not the student plus the form teacher or the form teacher. No, because the students was the one that came first before you have these intervening expressions as well as, and you now have their form teacher. Their form teacher is not a subject, so it has to enter into agreement with a plural verb, which is are. The students as well as their form teacher are lazy. The boys, in collaboration with the girl, sing melodiously. Here you consider the what? The boys and not the girl, because the boy here is the what? The subject. It has to agree with the plural verb, sing. Now the seventh rule is called proximity concord. What do we mean by proximity? Proximity means nearness. Here you consider the subject, the noun that is close to the noun that is close to the verb. Now, when do we know, or when do we enter into proximity concord? We enter into proximity concord by the use of what we call correlative conjunctions. What did I call it? Correlative conjunctions. When we talk of correlative conjunctions, they are those conjunctions that go in pairs. They don't go in isolation. Take for instance, you have either or. Anytime you have such conjunctions, they usually have two subjects. And in such case, the one that agrees with the verb of the sentence is the noun that is close to the verb. You forget the other one. The one, that is why we call it proximity. Proximity means nearness. You have correlatives like either or, neither nor, not only but. The verb agrees with the subject near to it. Example: either you or I am to represent the school. Most times when you speak like this, some students and some listeners will doubt the expression and take the sentence to be in error. Now, either you or I. What is the present form of verb to be that goes with I? It is am, am. You say, either you or I am to represent the school. It sounds somehow, but it is grammatically correct. Another example: neither the children nor their mother. Here now, the noun that is close to the verb is mother and not children. And because of that, the verb has to agree with that noun that is close to it. Mother is in the singular, the verb has to be in the singular. And that is why you say, neither the children nor their mother knows how to sing and not know. Another example: not only the prefect, but the entire students. Entire students. In this case, we have a plural noun coming close or near the verb. You now say not only the prefect, but the entire students insult their teachers. Another example, another rule 8. Indefinite pronouns. There are pronouns we call indefinite. Indefinite means they are not definite. You don't know the person being discussed or the person we are talking about. Pronouns like everybody, anybody, everything, each, nobody, either, not either or, but only either here. When we have such indefinite pronoun, they usually enter into agreement with their singular verbs. Either of these teachers teaches French. What does this mean? It is like saying one of these teachers, either of these teachers. Another example: everybody prefers the new principal. In this case now, everybody here is the what? The indefinite pronoun. You don't know. Everybody is nobody. Who is everybody? It is indefinite. It is not particular. Right? So it enters into agreement with what? The verb prefers, which is what? Singular. Another example: each of the boys was given the money. Each. One out of the boys was given the money. Another: everything is all right. Nobody wants to be poor. Nobody wants to be poor. Rule 9 states that the sentences with the constructions one of go with singular verbs. You see, in English language, anytime you say one What does it mean? The noun that should come after it must be in plural. You don't say one of my brothers. Rather, you say one of my brothers, meaning your brothers are more than one. They are more than one. Okay? One of our teachers. It will be wrong, and they run us to say one of our teachers. No, it is wrong. Anytime you use one of any noun, it means that that thing you are talking about is more than one. And because it is more than one, what do? You are talking of one of it, not all of them. So anytime you have such expression, it has to take singular verbs. Example: one of my brothers lives abroad. Not all my brothers, meaning I have more than one brother, but one of them lives abroad. Another example: one of the drivers was drunk. Not all the drivers, one. And because one is singular, it has to enter into agreement with a verb that is singular. Each of the parents prays for their children. You have parents each prays. Now let's go to rule 10. When the subject of a sentence is an adjective and the adjective is collective adjective used as a noun, this is what we call in English nominalized noun, under nominalization. You are nominalized adjective. That is, you make adjective to become or function as a noun. When you have such unit, it takes a plural verb. Example: the poor. The poor. Here now, the adjective here is poor. It has been nominalized. It has been made a noun. How do we know it is nominalized? By the introduction of the definite article there before it. We usually use that in the nominalization of adjectives. Now, when you have such, it takes a plural verb. It means the poor. The poor means all the people that are poor. Okay? Because there are more than one, they go with a plural verb. The poor are rich in patience. Another example: the blind need assistance and they laugh. The blind need, not needs, because needs is a singular while need is plural. And when we talk of the blind, we talk of all the people that are blind. They need our assistance and our love. Another example: the rich also cry. Those people that are rich, all the people that are rich, it's telling us that sometimes they do cry. Now, rule 11 states that if the subject is a relative pronoun, the verb must agree with its antecedent. If the subject is a relative pronoun, we have relative pronouns like who, which, what, whose, and what have you. Now, when you have the subject of the verb to be a relative pronoun, it has to agree with its antecedent. Which one is its antecedent? That noun that came before it. That noun it refers to. That noun it relates us to. That is why we call it relative pronoun. It relates us to a noun. When you have such, it has to agree, the verb has to agree with that noun that came before that relative pronoun. For example, my friend is a noun. Who studies pharmacy? Now, when you talk of who studies, the relative pronoun here is who, because it relates us to the noun that went before it, which is my friend. You say, my friend who? The subject of the verb there is who. It is a relative pronoun. That is the subject of the verb studies. But what is the who relating us to? That who is relating us to my friend. And what is the number of my friend? It is a singular. So you say, my friend who studies, and not who study, because it is a singular person who studies pharmacy knows the code. It also governs this verb, knows the code. Who knows the code? That my friend. The houses which were sold belong to us. In this case now, we have the relative pronoun which it relates to the verb, the antecedent, which is the houses. And the houses is in the plural. It has to agree with the verb has to be in the plural form, so that you have the houses and you have belong as the verb. You also have it is you that are confused. In this case, the relative pronoun is that. And because it is that, it has to agree, the verb has to agree with its antecedent. And what is the antecedent of that relative pronoun that? The antecedent is what? You. And you, as I said when I started this lesson, enters into agreement with plural verb. So you have it is you that are confused. Not it is you that is confused. It is wrong. You say it is you that are confused, because anywhere you see you, it enters into agreement with a plural verb. The books which treat the topic are costly. The books, we have relative pronoun which, okay, it has the antecedent, the books. It has to enter into agreement with a plural verb, treat. Now, rule 12. When the subject is collective noun, the verb is a singular. Collective noun, noun that appears in group, is called a collective noun. You have the couple. The couple, meaning the husband and the wife, they come together, you use it in collective, it goes with a singular verb. The couple was not invited, and not the couple were not invited. No. Another collective noun, the congregation is exploited every day. The congregation, these are the group of people you see in the church that come for worship. They are referred to as the congregation. It is a collective. They were collected and referred to one. A gang of armed robbers has been rounded up. A gang of armed robbers has been rounded up. Here we have gang there as a collective noun. It has to enter into agreement with a singular verb. A choir of 60 singers is practicing many new songs. You have choir there of choristers as being a collective noun, which has to enter into agreement with what? A singular verb. Rule 13. Rule 13 states that all the subjects ending in ICS, most subjects that ends in ICS, so many learners are usually confused because of the S, the inflection S that ends the subject. Sometimes they begin to suspect that this must be treated as plural, but it is wrong. It enters into agreement with a singular verb, because despite the fact that ending S, they are still treated using as a singular verb. Example, phonetics is a study of speech sounds. You see, phonetics ends in ICS. Yes, yet it is treated as a singular subject. Ethics helps man to know what is good and evil. Mathematics is an easy subject in comparison with English language. You see, mathematics has to enter into agreement with what? With a singular verb. Now for rule 14, what is rule 14 all about? In rule 14, it states that certain abstract nouns end in S, but that do not make them plural, and so they are seen as what? Singular verbs. They enter into agreement with singular verb. Certain abstract nouns that end in s. Examples of such nouns are news, measles, whereabouts, series, species, and so on. Now, let's see examples. The sad news was broadcast on the radio last night. You see, news is news everywhere. It is an abstract noun, a noun you can neither see, neither can you touch it. Because you cannot do these two things, you cannot feel them with your five senses, we say they are abstract. And because they're abstract, they enter into agreement with what? With a singular verb. The sad news was broadcast on the radio last night. His whereabouts is not known to anybody. Measles is a dangerous disease. You can see measles ends in S, yet it is treated as what? As a singular subject. The serious complaints have been received. Now let's go to rule 15. The verb of the deer used as an introductory word in a sentence agrees with the object of its verb. When you begin a sentence with the adverb there, okay, the verb of the sentence you will find there will not agree with them. Rather, it has to agree with the object of the verb of the sentence. Let's see example. There was nobody in the room. There was nobody in the room. In this case, the what we consider is the object. And what is the object? The object is nobody, and nobody is an indefinite pronoun, which I explained earlier. And I said they usually enter into agreement with what? With singular verb. That is why it will be wrong for you to say there were nobody in the room. No, it is wrong. Another example, there were so many people waiting to be entertained. There were many people waiting to be entertained. In this case, now what do we consider? The object. And what is the object? So many people, more than one person. So it has to enter into agreement with the verb were. Another example, there is nothing that bothers her about her future. There is nothing that bothers her about her future. In this case, now we have nothing as the object. The verb has to agree with the object this time. Rule 16. The number 16 rule says or states that some nouns are plural, although we regard them as objects, as singular objects or singular nouns. How do we mean? There are some nouns that are plural, but sometimes when we refer to them as being what? As being singular. But they're not, maybe because the way we see them or the way they appear. And when we have such noun, they have to enter into agreement with a plural verb. Now, like scissors, you may think that because the scissors is just a unit, it is just one. It is true that it has a pair joined together by a screw. Some people will take it to be singular. No. Scissors in grammar is considered as plural subject, and anytime you use it, it has to enter into agreement with a plural verb. Trousers. Trousers. In these trousers, you see that because it is true we have pair. Okay, we have a pair there. We have the trousers for two legs, for both legs. So some people, because the both legs are used as one, some people tend to consider it as singular. It is not. You talk of glasses as I'm wearing it, it has two lenses, And because of that, we consider it as plural and not singular. Spectacles, pliers, and so on. For example, my spectacles are in the car, not my spectacles is in the car. My glasses is in the car. No. My glasses are in the car. My trousers are dirty, not my trousers is what? Is dirty. The pliers are loose, not is loose. Please take note of all this. Now, with that, we have come to the end of today's lesson under CONCORD. Remember that when we did or when we studied the literary aspect of the language, we told you that so many students score 0 under punctuation marks, and when you consider the things that make students score very low marks, poor mark under punctuation, we discovered under mechanical accuracy, we discovered that CONCORD, that is grammar, errors in grammar. And in this grammar, one of the errors that makes students score very low under the mechanical accuracy is this CONCORD. That is why we decided to teach it. Remember that as we round off, that CONCORD is that agreement that exists between the subject and the verb in a sentence. And the rules of CONCORD states that the subject of the verb must agree with the verb in terms of the number and the. Now, as we come to the end of the lesson, you have these evaluation questions here, 1 to 11. Please respond to them and submit. Thank you very much. Teachers contact, you can reach me through my WhatsApp on 080-374-80227. Thanks so much and remain blessed.